Am I visible, audible? Hello.
Yes, I can see and hear you.
Awesome. Great. So let's begin our session for today. Sit comfortably. Keep your back and neck straight. And when you feel ready, very gently close your eyes. Just start observing your breath. Watch the natural flow of your breathing as you inhale and as you exhale. Now slowly shift your attention to the body. Become aware of the posture and see if you need to adjust or align your body. Gently come back to the breathing and now begin to deepen your breath. Go for slow, long and deep inhalations. Slow, long and deep exhalations. We are going to open today's session by chanting Om 3 times, followed by 3 shantis. Take a deep inhalation for Om.
Dem Handy.
Sorry, is my voice breaking?
No, this was my problem. My internet connection is bad till yesterday, but now it's okay. I hope.
Oh. All right. Okay. So let's come back into the posture and close the eyes again. We will chant Om 2 more times. Om. Om. Shanti. 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 Feel the vibrations, feel the sensations. Now join your palms together and begin to rub the palms. Keep the palms on the eyes. Very slowly, while blinking and looking at the palms, begin to open up your eyes, coming back to the smile. Namaste and Om Shanti. Let us begin our session for today. So, returning back to yoga philosophy, today we are changing our topic of discussion, right? So, we have completed all the topics that come under lifestyle practices, and today we are going to start with a new topic which is very relevant for you. So in so many classes you have been hearing me say the yoga, like say or mention the Yoga Sutras. And today we are going to in fact study about the Yoga Sutras only, right? So whenever yoga philosophy is talked of, somehow Yoga Sutras become the main source, right? Or they are in fact the source of yoga philosophy. Okay. So the Yoga Sutras, these were written by Maharishi Patanjali, right? So you can write down, I will just narrate the spelling of the name. So Maharishi, Patanjali, Patanjali, Maharishi Patanjali. And this text holds a lot of importance for us. Why? Because we are already very deeply exploring what yoga philosophy is. Now, let's come to why this text is so relevant. Everything is very concise in nature. Everything has been systematized properly, and it has been put together as a compilation of 195 verses. Okay? So there are total 195 verses in this text, and in some places you will see the mention of 196 verses. It's just that one verse was broken down into two parts in one of the commentaries, and since then the number of verses, it is said to be 196, but originally that the broken down verse, it was one only, so 195 verses. Okay, so this text has been given in a flow form, right? So Patanjali, when he sat down and he narrated the knowledge of yoga, he gave it in a flow form. So verses or sutras. So sutra, this term, yoga sutras, right? So sutra, this term means thread-like. Okay, thread-like, or maybe you can say like it's joined, right? There is one thing leading to the other, then leading to the other, right? So it's very important to understand this thing that when you begin to read this text, so this is just an introductory class. We are not going to cover the text in these classes, but just if you get very curious, you want to read more deeply, I will highly recommend that you read the text in the flow in which it is given, right? So generally for academic purposes, people just pick up one portion or the other to study it, to deeply analyze it. But the knowledge can only be properly understood if it is read in the flow in which it was given, right? So sutras mean that the maybe the fifth verse will make sense to you if you have read the first four, right? So the fourth one is closely interlinked to the fifth verse, right? And you will be able to understand why he has given this fifth verse or the contextual meaning of the fifth verse only if you have read the previous four verses, right? So each and every verse is dependent on each other, right? And you can only understand the entire picture when you read it in the correct format, right? Sutras were also coded languages, right? So sutra, this term, it means that the language was coded, right? So coded language wasn't accessible to everybody, right? So if I write something down in some code form, right, you will not be able to exactly understand what I'm saying, but because you maybe understand that code language or the code that I have written, you will be able to make some sense out of what I have written, right? So in that same way, when Patanjali he gave this knowledge, he gave it in a very coded form, right? And hence you will find so many commentaries on the Yoga Sutras, right? So you will find across history different people depending on how their experience has been or how they have understood the verse, they have given a commentary on it, right? So because the code, it is leaving a space for the person to interpret, right? Now, my experience and your experience can be different, right? We are moving towards the same thing, but our experiences can turn out to be different, right? So I will write down a commentary based on my experience, and maybe you will write down a commentary based on your understanding and experience, right? So Yoga Sutras, you will find multiple commentaries, right? But the best way to understand them is through practice, right? So the essential, or what he was actually trying to say, that can only be understood if you practice along with the knowledge, right? So knowledge and practice should never go in an imbalance. If I have too much knowledge, I will probably even deny the need for the practice, right? And there would be an imbalance. I will have very logical questions, very analytical questions related to the practice, right? Which can only be answered if I level up my experience. And sometimes the experience is a lot, but the knowledge is so less. So again, there is an imbalance. You will not understand where you are headed or where you can lose your direction, right? So it's very important to maintain the balance between both of them. So you will find some people, they go into very deep analysis of the Yoga Sutras. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I would highly recommend that if you are thinking of analyzing them that deeply, then also make sure that you practice along with it so that you can gain the correct understanding of what is being talked about, right? So this entire text, it has been divided into 4 chapters depending on what kind of thing he was addressing, right? So these chapters are called PAD, right? PADA. Okay. So he give the 195 sutras. They are divided, further subdivided into 4 main chapters. Now let's come to the 4 chapters. Let's see the name of each and every one of them. So first chapter is called Samadhi Pad. So SAMADHI, Samadhi. PADA. So the chapter related to Samadhi, or you can in bracket write down absorption. Now coming to the second chapter. In the second chapter, he has talked of sadhana or discipline. So it's called sadhana path, right? Sadhana means SADHANA, sadhana. Again, chapter is path, PADA. So you can write down in bracket, this is related to more of the discipline, right? Sadhana means discipline. Now, third chapter, it's called Vibhuti Path, the chapter which is elaborating on the psychic powers, right? So Vibhuti, you can spell it as VIBHOOTI. Vibhuti. Path is again PAD, right? So this is the chapter. In brackets, you can write down psychic powers. Right? And then fourth one is called Kaivalya Path. KAIVALYA. Kaivalya. PADA. Right? Kaivalya is isolation, right? So you can write down in bracket, this is the ultimate goal of yoga, right? So this is the ultimate or point of culmination, like end point of the yogic practices is actually Kaivalya, right? So first chapter is Samadhi, second is Sadhana, then Vibhuti, and then Kaivalya. So samadhi is of multiple types, and the last type or the end point of samadhi, that state is called Kaivalya, when you are free from all the sufferings. It's also known by the name of moksha, right? Moksha, Kaivalya, or in English, I can say liberation, which is like the ultimate freedom from all the sources of suffering, right? So samadhi is very vague. Kaivalya is the exact term which Patanjali used to describe the state for which you are practicing yoga. Okay. So his text, it is in a different format. Generally, when you open a book, you find that the small practices are given, and then eventually that book, it gives you the you can say practices for beginner level, then intermediate level, then advanced level, right? But Patanjali, he understood this very important thing, that the time of the advanced level student is the most valuable, right? So what will the advanced level student do reading the practices for beginner and intermediate level? And as I said, the knowledge that is given, it is in flow form. So if the advanced level student starts the text, they will have to read through all of it until they reach their set of practices, because it is written in a flow, right? So what Patanjali did, he changed the structure of his text a little. First, he addressed the advanced level student. So in the first chapter, he has addressed the practices for the advanced level student. Then in the second chapter, he moves on to elaborate the practices for the intermediate level student. And the second chapter is where you also find the mention of Ashtanga Yoga, right? Or 8 limbs of yoga, right? So out of the 8 limbs, first 5 limbs are discussed in the second chapter itself, right? So now what will happen? The advanced level student, they will pick up the text, they will first understand what is yoga, right? In the beginning only, Patanjali, he has elaborated on what yoga actually is, and then he would the advanced level student would find the relevant practices for him or her, right? So through the first chapter, they can read it, they can get free, right? They can start their practices, right? Now intermediate level student, they will also understand what they are aiming for. They will go through the practices and understanding for the advanced level student, and then they will reach the second chapter and they will reach the set of practices they have, right? So now what this kind of flow is doing is, the intermediate level student, once they get their practices and they do them continuously, they will reach to the advanced level student phase, right? So they don't have to open the courses again, right? They already know what are the practices for the advanced level student. They can change from the intermediate practices to the advanced level practices, and they can also reach their final goal. Okay. Then the beginner level, they will start from the beginning, right? They will see the definition of yoga, they will go through the advanced intermediate level practices, and then they will finally reach their set of practices, right? So Ashtanga Yoga, which got very, very famous, it is still very famous. That is the practice for an a beginner level student, sorry, a beginner level student. So now beginner level has already gone through the other 2 stages. So when they reach those stages, they will again change their practices and adopt those practices, which is going to help them to achieve their final goal, right? So the entire relevance of writing down the text in this way was actually this, because each and every student is eventually, if they begin the practice, aim to reach to higher levels of, right? So they are already aware of what they have to do when they reach the next level, right? Now, as the second chapter ends, the third chapter begins, and the remaining 3 limbs, right, of the 8 limbs, out of the 8 limbs, those are discussed in the third chapter, right? And then Patanjali, he has talked about the psychic powers, right? So when you walk on the path of yoga, there are some psychic abilities that we all get, right? So it is the byproduct of a process, right? Suppose I am processing the sugar cane and I want to reach white sugar, right? So as the processing will go on, there are going to be some byproducts in that entire processing, right? And then I will reach my final target, right? So in this case, when this is happening, there are some things that are by default produced. You cannot do anything, right? So the psychic powers are also something like that. When I decide I want to walk from here till maybe the shop outside, I have to cross certain places, right? So those certain places, one of them is the psychic powers, right? So Patanjali has discussed, in fact, in depth what the psychic powers are and what all psychic powers the yogi can attain, right? Walking on the path. But when he is closing the chapter, he gives a very like strong warning to all the aspirants who are walking on the path of yoga. He says that these psychic powers are very appealing in their nature, right? So now if I tell you that, if you walk on the path of yoga, you will be able to, communicate telepathically to someone, or maybe you could, increase your size too much, right? So size of the body too much, right? So you will get very fascinated by this, right? So people today, they are very fascinated by, kundalini, awakening of kundalini, right? So these things are very fascinating to the mind, and hence they become a very big obstacle on the path of you, because these are merely byproducts of the process you are putting yourself through, right? It is nothing extraordinary. It is quite ordinary on the path that you have chosen to walk on, right? So he warns each and every aspirant that don't get stuck here, because he knows, people do tend to get stuck there. So he warns like in advance only, don't get stuck over here. You have to move past this. The psychic powers, they are just a stepping stone, right? They are not the place where you have to stand, right? So if you suppose you reach the psychic power, you're still in the middle of the river, crossing the river, and you choose to stop there, right? So everybody around you, they will push you, they will say, go ahead, cross the bridge, but you will stand in the middle, right? And to a common person, this will seem very stupid, no? That if somebody is crossing the river and they just stop in between, right? But on the yogic journey, most people, they tend to get caught up in the psychic powers, right? So your target should be very clear to you. Your goal is not to attain the psychic powers. Your goal is to attain ultimate freedom, the freedom from all the sins, right? So once you have your eyes set, right, you eventually reach to this point, which is called Kevalya, right? Kevalya, this term means isolation, right? So for the ultimate achievement of, like, the achievement of the ultimate goal, right, one has to go into isolation. Now this doesn't mean wherever you are today only you have to pack your bags and leave the society behind. No, it's quite different, right? The yogi knows when they are ready, to leave the society behind. If today we leave the society behind, we go into the woods, we want to live in the forest, we will come running back, we will come crying back. Why? Because we are jumping to an extreme, right? We are not ready for it. But the yogi, through the practices, makes himself or herself ready, right, to go into isolation, because this understanding is very clear that the final goal is only achieved in isolation, right? So it's very advanced level. Okay, guys, don't think that right now, tomorrow you will be ready, pack the bags and leave. Right? It's not about packing the bags and leaving. Right? It's about the internal realization. Then you will not even look back. Right? There's so many stories of so many yogis who left the society behind. Right? If you take the example of Siddhartha Gautam, famously known as Buddha. So once he decided he is going to find the final answer, he never came back to the kingdom before that, right? He, you know, or at least even if he would have, uh, that thing would not have been there. Even though yogis, when they go into isolation, they go into isolation. Right? There is only more and more isolation from there on, right? So these yogis, when they left their houses, they did not go back. Why? Because they were ready. They were ready. Their will was strong enough to find those answers. So make yourselves capable first. Okay, make yourselves capable first so that naturally this state of mind will arise that now you want to go into isolation. And once the yogi sits in isolation, right, the person sits in isolation, it's only then that they experience the ultimate freedom from all the suffering. So the state of moksha or kevala can only be experienced in isolation, right? So through these four chapters, 195 verses, Patanjali has systematized the yogic practices. He has given the practices on the basis of the level of the student, and he has tried to impart the knowledge in the shortest manner possible. Okay, so these are a few details about the sutras, right? If we have time in the upcoming classes, we will also discuss more on what are the practices, and Ashtanga Yoga we are going to discuss any which way. Right, so Ashtanga Yoga is a major part of your syllabus that we are going to cover any which way. But apart from that, we are also going to look into other books which are, um, highlighting the process and the benefits of practicing yoga, right? So, any questions or doubts, any difficulties? If you have any, yeah.
No, everything is fine.
Oh, great. Awesome. So let's begin with today's pranayama session. Right. So today we are going to talk of another practice, which is again a pre-practice only. Right. So pranayama still hasn't started yet. Right. We are going to talk about the pre-practice for pranayama, and this pre-practice is very famous as well. So a lot of people who sit for pranayama before even starting their practice, they go for a few rounds, right? So this practice is called Kapalbhati. Kapal, Kapal, and then Bhati. Bhati. Kapalbhati. So Kapal, this term means forehead. Okay, so this region in Sanskrit, this is called Kapal. And then Bhati, this term means light, or in a lot of places very famously known as shining, right? So Kapal Bhati, this term means shining or cleansing of this forehead region. All right. So this practice in modern terms, modern yogis, they turned it into a pranayam only. They said that Kapalbhati is a pranayam. However, if you go back traditionally, you look at Hatha Yogic texts, Kapalbhati is a practice of cleansing. So out of the 6 cleansing practices, you most likely have been introduced to at least jalneti, right? So pouring water from through one nostril and it coming out of the other one, right? So uh, like you can see when you pour the water, the mucus, it flows out. So similarly, Kapal Bhati is also cleaning this area. So it is one of the 6 cleansing practices. And these practices are done before, right? Pranayam. This is like a preparatory practice. You are just making sure that your nostrils are flowing. You are prepared for pranayam practices. Okay? So in modern terms, you can pass it down as pranayam, but in actuality, it is a practice of cleansing, right? So let's talk a little bit about how we do this practice, what we have to take care of when we are doing this practice, and then we will touch upon a few benefits of this practice. Okay. So let's first of all talk of how we are going to do the practice. So Kapalbhati is a practice where we focus on the exhalation, right? So generally in our day-to-day life, we are actively inhaling and passively exhaling. But when we turn to Kapalbhati, we reverse this process. We go for active exhalations and passive inhalations. Okay. So in Kapalbhati, again, the posture is of utmost relevance. You have to make sure you don't move your body throughout the practice, right? Even though the practice is quite rigorous in its um, form, we try not to move the body at all, right? How do we do this practice, right? If you can sit comfortably with a straight back, it is fine. Okay, then you can go for any of the postures that I have described in previous classes, right? However, if you feel you form a hunch on your back, or especially your lower back, okay, so main point of focus over here should be the lower back, right? So if you feel that the lower back, you are not able to maintain the natural curve of the lower back, then you can go for position which will help you to maintain that natural curve of the lower back. Why I'm saying this? Because when we do Kapalbhati, when we exhale forcefully, we also contract the abdomen forcefully, right? So suppose I am going for active exhalation, then I would need the support of some body partner to exhale actively. So I am using my abdominal muscles in this practice. Okay. So when I exhale so forcefully, right, the pressure will very easily come on my lower back, right? So a lot of people, they face lower back pain after the practice of Kapalbhati, which is indicative of the fact that they are not doing the practice correctly, right? They have to keep their back straight, right? So if you feel you are one of those people who struggle with this, you can adopt any posture that you like, okay? And then you can just follow instruction. Can just keep your hands on your knees. You can keep both your hands on your knees, and the elbows should be straight. Right, like this, you will grab your knees, right, and then you will bend slightly forward, right. So this pressure that you are creating, right, through this position, right, you feel a little bit pressure on your knees. Like this pressure that you create, this will help you to keep the lower back straight, right. The straightening of the arms and putting the pressure on the knees, we are able to keep the lower back straight. So when you do Kapalbhati, try. If you are unable to keep the back straight, you can definitely go for this position, which will ensure that the lower back remains straight. Now, how do we do this practice? When we exhale, we contract our abdomen inside, and we have to bring the navel as close to the spine as possible, right? So you can take one or two deep breaths before that. So generally when I teach, I give the instruction to breathe deeply 2 times, right? And then in the third time, we inhale again deeply, and then with the exhalation, we begin with the practice. Okay? So I will just sit normally and demonstrate one time for you. Right? In the last breath, I make little bit more effort to exhale fully, right? So the breath moves out more forcefully than the previous round, right? So this kind of sound comes up when you do the last exhalation. and then you just leave your body, right? You allow the breathing system to breathe as it wants, right? So there is no forceful inhalation after this. There is no further forceful exhalation after this. All you have to do is allow the body to breathe as it wants to breathe. Sometimes you will feel you want to breathe, right? More far, like you will go for fast breaths. Sometimes you will not feel like breathing at all, right? So all you have to do is just give the body what it needs after the practice of Kapalbhati. When you do Kapalbhati, you can choose to keep your attention either on the abdomen or in the area between both the eyebrows. It's totally up to you because the cleansing is taking place at this place, right? But the abdominal muscles are also actively engaged, so whichever suits you better out of the two, you can go ahead and adopt that, right? So, Kapalbhati should never be done with a full stomach. Okay, at least 3 to 4 hours of gap should be given after a meal to practice Kapalbhati. If you can, go for early morning practice, but if you are doing this in the evening, it is very important that the stomach is empty because you feel the pressure directly come on the stomach, right? Second thing, Kapalbhati should never be done during the night time or close to the night time. It's like same science that workout should not be done too late in the evening because it hampers your sleep. So Kapalbhati is a practice which generally activates your system, right? So if you do it late in the evening or at night, there are high possibilities that you will not be able to fall asleep, right? And it is only because you did the practice late, right? In case of any discomfort or any pain, you should completely suspend the practice. A few errors that people make when they do Kapalbhati, they move their shoulders up and down. Okay, this has to be avoided. They contract their face muscles too much. Again, the face has to be relaxed, right? Uh, because people believe that the exhalation it has to be forced out, what they do is they start creating some pressure in their nostril region, right? So the air is moving out of your system in Kapalbhati because of the contraction of the abdomen, right? So the pressure is coming from here, but because sometimes people are unable to connect with the practice, they will contract their face too much and like specifically exhale from the nostril, right? So this is again incorrect. All of the pressure is coming from the abdomen. The air will move out naturally. You don't have to apply any extra pressure over it. Your body should be stable, even though it is forceful exhalation. It will, you know, uh, try to take you towards moving your body. You have to maintain the stability of the body. Only movement takes place in the abdomen. One more point that I want to address is that sometimes because we are very good at copying, we see the face of the person who is demonstrating it and we try to copy that. Okay? So like right now, I demonstrated at a very medium pace, right? So people perform Kapalbhati at a very fast pace, right? So there are three categories of paces: the slow paced, the medium paced, and fast paced practice, right? So I demonstrated the medium paced practice, right? But if you feel that this is too tiring for you, you can go for slower strokes, right? So the strokes, they are better gapped, right? You are taking more time for each and every stroke. And then uh, if you advance in the practice, then you can even go for faster strokes, right? So you have to check your capability. If you are doing the strokes correctly, slowly with practice, they will become fast, right? But if you begin with fast practice, right, there might be a possibility you harm your body, you don't do the practice correctly, and all the benefits you have to derive from it, you are unable to do that. Why? Because the person who demonstrated the practice to you, they were doing it fast. So your focus shifts from bringing the navel as close to the spine. From this point, it shifts to how many strokes I will complete in 1 minute or 2 minutes, right? So that is not the target, the latter one. The former one, that the navel should always go as close to the spine as possible in each and every round. This is your target, right? So I would say that initially go for slower strokes, and then as your practice advances, you can go for fast paced strokes. One more point, some people they start very fast, okay, and then by the end of it, they are breathless, they are unable to maintain the frequency, or you can say the pace of the practice. This is again incorrect. Initially, from the first stroke till the last stroke, the pressure should be equal, right? And the frequency or the consistency of the practice, it should be maintained, right? So if I start with very fast strokes and eventually I reach a point where I'm doing the strokes very slowly, means I'm misjudging my own capability. The stroke should be quite consistent throughout the practice. Okay, so take care of these few things. Let me just quickly mention who should not do Kapalbhati, and then I will also quickly discuss a few benefits, then we will practice, right? So, who should not do Kapalbhati? Anybody who is having high blood pressure, heart disease, vertigo, stroke, right? In case of uh, hernia, because too much pressure is applied, right? In case of gastric ulcers, this practice should be completely avoided, right? These people should not go for the practice of Kapalbhati, right? Let's talk about the benefits also. Kapalbhati is a wonderful practice. It cleanses the forehead region. Like I said, it expels out any mucus. So sometime when you are like having a cold, if you do Kapalbhati, all of the mucus will, come out, right? So it helps you to expel any kind of additional toxins, especially from the nose region, right? It helps you to, activate the mind, right? And Kapalbhati, overall helps you to balance out. So for respiratory disorders, Kapalbhati is a very, very good practice, right? And overall, it balances out the state of your mind, right? So even though I know I've said that it is making the mind active, so of course it is increasing the awareness, but it also brings a sense of stability and calmness along with it, which you experience after you are done with the strokes, right? So Kapalbhati is a very, very holistic kind of practice, and it puts you in the right state of mind, the right state of breath before you begin your pranayama practices. So in each and every session, you should try to include both Nadi Shodhan and Kapalbhati. These are very, very beneficial practices. Kapalbhati has more restrictions than Nadi Shodhan. But if you feel your crowd is such where you can introduce Kapalbhati, then you definitely should do that, right? And if you feel you are healthy enough for it, then you should keep Kapalbhati in your practice, right? So let's begin with the practice itself, right? Let's just see how we feel after we complete the practice. Any questions, doubts, or queries? Okay. All right. So, all right, great. Yeah, thumbs up is good for me to know, right? That all is well. Right. So let's begin with the practice. Sit comfortably, keep your back and neck straight. And once you feel ready, very gently close your eyes. Start observing the natural flow of the breathing as you inhale and as you exhale. Now slowly shift your attention to your body. Become aware of your posture and see if you need to make any adjustment. Now gently come back to your breathing and begin to deepen the breath. Prepare yourself for the first practice. We are going to go for abdominal craving. Exhale fully. As you begin to inhale, feel the abdomen rise and expand. As you exhale, contract your abdomen. Just keep breathing like this. Inhale, abdomen out. Exhale, abdomen in. Just gain some control over your breathing. After your next exhalation, suspend your practice. Just connect with the natural flow of your breathing. And feel the difference. Keep your back and neck straight. Make sure specifically that your lower back remains straight. We are going to go for 15 to 20 stroke of Kapalbhati. So if you feel the need, you can keep your hands, palms facing downwards, elbows will come straight. There is no bend in the elbow. And shift the body weight ahead. We will go for 3 breaths before we start the practice. Begin to take a deep breath in. Deep breath out. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Take a deep breath in, and with the exhalation, start the process of Kapalbhati. After 20 strokes, exhale out all the air and allow your system to breathe as it wants to breathe. See how you feel after the first round. Check if there is any kind of discomfort. Take some time to observe and to relax the abdominal muscle. Keep your back and neck straight. We are going to go for another round. So if you were uncomfortable with 15 to 20 rounds, you can reduce the number, come to 10 to 15. If you were comfortable with 50 rounds, you can increase it and go for 20 to 25 rounds. Right? So again, make sure that the lower back remains straight. Eyes are gently closed. We're going to go for the 3 breaths. So take a deep breath in, deep breath out, deep breath in, deep breath out. Take a deep breath in, and with the exhalation again, begin with the strokes of Kapalbhati. On your last exhalation, go for a very forceful exhalation. Expel out all the air from your system, and then you can come back to however your body wants to breathe. If you were sitting in the position where palms are facing downwards, you can also release your hands. Just make sure your back and neck are straight. Stay connected